I found a way to get rid of duckweed and I deserve a Nobel Prize. If you're watching this video, you probably have a good idea of what duckweed can do and how dire the situation can be. One tiny piece of this super plant touches water, it'll double its biomass every 24 hours. It's just a matter of time before a fish keeper becomes completely overwhelmed. Duckweed makes great wallpaper as it sticks to your hopes and dreams. The name duckweed can refer to 37 different species, but I will be talking about the most annoying duckweed, Lemna minor, or a common duckweed. For the past several years, I have scooped out 3 times my body weight in aquarium glitter. This is duckweed out of control. The bubbles make less and less agitation. Having duckweed this thick could be oxygen deprivating. I've scoured the internet high and low. I've been through 13 techniques, and no one mentions this enough. A submersible powerhead circulation pump that makes the surface of your fish tank a babbling brook, which the duckweed does not like. You can see there's different size duckweed. Water is cloudy. That's a good thing. The one that's furthest along would be this tank. While the guppy grass would hold the duckweed at first, eventually after 3 or 4 days, this is day 7, the duckweed has broken loose. We've got little particles. The fish are slightly annoyed. It looked like he was drooping just now, but that was a mating dance. So this is what I'm talking about with the duckweed. It basically gets cradled and coddled. You could change the water and it would push, the water line would push all the guppy grass down, and then when you fill it back up, the guppy grass will actually stay down, the duckweed will float up, only to get agitated again without somewhere to stick to. Alright, this duckweed gets blown around and agitated into oblivion. This is how I originally tried it. You get a big bubbler. You create absolute chaos inside the tank by cranking up this bubbler. But eventually, the duckweed will rally and it will withhold the agitation. Okay, so from the beginning, this is one of my water puzzles. 10 gallons. I'm going to use items to pin plants to the ground we don't want floating. Pin stem plants to the ground. Every tank is a water flow puzzle. Minimize the duckweed opportunities by getting plants out of the way. On this tank, I opted out of pre-pawing the duckweed. If you're persistent enough with circulation, the duckweed will eventually break. In a lot of ways, duckweed will survive if it can take refuge and anchor enough members either to the corners of the tank or below the surface. The duckweed dissipation rate would be exponentially higher if you grabbed yourself a few handfuls of that duckweed before turning on the circulation pump. Long-tailed guppies may have trouble keeping up. You'll have to foster places for every guppy where the flow doesn't reach. Timers aren't a bad idea. If you could go every hour for 12 hours or maybe 6 hours a day, that would disrupt the duckweed. I'm thinking as low as 3 hours, really. That can get expensive. If it gets too rough for your fish, consider running more tanks. Maybe no lights, store the fish there. They'll be fine with the ambient room light. Putting this circulation pump at the top is the way to go. This one's been the least amount, maybe 2 days instead of 4 days and 7 days. That is some poor Brazilian waterweed. Almost got taken out. So we've got some guppy fry in here, boilers actually. They're doing great in here. This isn't all duckweed, but you can see it's like a murky bog right now. The snails don't help. I want to talk about saving your floating plants from the duckweed purge. Now, of course, with stem plants, you try to pin them to the bottom of the tank. They stay out of the way of the water flow. They do sway back and forth in the water wind, but it doesn't harm them. With floating plants, however, moving water means death, or at least damage. This pennywort wants to grow at the surface, and it's been dying back a little. There's a subsection of floaters that grow so quick they actually outmaneuver duckweed, and then they're big enough just to get out of your tank when you no longer want any shade. I categorize these as the fast growers. Frogbit, water spangles, water lettuce, crystalwort are all plants that grow faster than duckweed. They will outgrow your duckweed, and they'll do it even better in 95-degree weather. Duckweed exists on this micro level you don't have to deal with that viscosity with larger plants. So even if they grow faster, they're larger. You just pick them out. I always thought crystalwort was unique versus duckweed because it would zap the water of all the nutrients. Although that's not the case anymore with this tank. This crystalwort used to push this duckweed right out of the tank, had all the duckweed yellow, but then the pothos started tampering with the nutrient levels. Those are the easy floating plants to save from duckweed. You could almost grab a little piece, put it in a fresh tank under a high light. You could wait 5 weeks and you would have the same amount that you had before the duckweed purge. Are you ready for garden warfare? Here's a list of plants that inhibit the growth of duckweed. These plants are actually toxic to duckweed at various levels, the yellow lily being the strongest. Here's the scientific names because the marketing is a nightmare. I think there's at least 4 species called frog's bit as a common name. Only 4 of them are floating. I have 2 of these. The Vallisneria was actually sent to the hospital because of guppy grass. These plants inhibit the growth of water lettuce as well, and I've seen frogbit do both on water lettuce and duckweed. It doesn't completely eliminate duckweed though. It always is a little damaged and on the side. If you were trying to make frogbit completely clear of duckweed, I would recommend getting 1 piece to propagate, just rinsing it off and putting it in its fresh tank. American frogbit is a little fickle, and even ram's horn snails like to make a snack of the roots. I would imagine if you knew that you can grow frogbit at an exponential rate, you'd be more comfortable propagating from 1 piece. Now the other main category of floaters I can kind of think of are slow growers, and for me that would be the red root floaters and the purple root floaters. I was having a hard time with these guys in hard water, so I put them in trays with distilled water with various light levels, and the duckweed started pulling back while these slow growing floaters started taking over. In my mind, plants that are in water, it's either soft water or hard water, and then high light or low light. And then there's this factor of nutrients. Does it like to be alone? Is it a slow feeder or a fast feeder? Will it choke out other plants or get choked out? So tweaking these factors, you can actually get different results and be able to peel the duckweed off of the floaters that you do want to save. And these guys are actually under 14 hours of light, like a standard grow house, and the duckweed just changes consistency. You can peel it right out. It almost sticks to the skin. I've saved quite a few melting plants just by throwing them in distilled water, and I've tried different variables with these guys. We did high light and low light. Both are distilled water. It seems that just the distilled water is maximizing my floater growth and maximizing the duckweed death. I recently learned that 85% of US residents have hard water on their tap, and if you're part of that 15% with soft water, you have to, I guess, inverse this advice. So that's my workaround for using circulation pumps with floating plants. You take the plants to a separate tank, you let the plants choke each other out, or you hold the duckweed's head under the water by choosing certain variables, and then let the plants choke each other out. Eventually it'll be manageable where you can just pluck out 8 pieces of duckweed. Just don't give them any quarter. 8 can create 160 in 24 hours. I always envy people who can't grow duckweed. They want duckweed and they may ask me what my secret is, and all I can tell them is you just really gotta not want it.
Hungry? No.
The carnivores are getting ready for winter. They go dormant, and it was making me a little nervous. I turned off the fan thinking maybe blowing them with wind was deteriorating them. It actually grew fungus on my red root floaters. It's white and powdery, and it's a delight. It's gone down a bit over the days that I turned the fan back on full blast. I do like this fan because it replaces 3 or 4 small fans that oscillates in a figure 8. And the legends are true. Always run a fan inside your grow tent, even with aquatic plants. Not all duckweed is bad. This plant was saved by the shade that duckweed provided, although I see it choked out my purple root floaters. I'm currently not keeping animals that regularly snack on duckweed. My mystery snails do not eat duckweed. They only eat the most delectable of Snello, made from the finest of groceries, or their shells start tarnishing and they deteriorate before my very eyes. And it's pretty wild. I use the term groceries because baby food is in the ingredients. It's not just fruits and vegetables that's in the Snello. They're eating better than the mammals in my house, including me. After years of trying to get rid of duckweed, strategic use of a circulation pump or a powerhead is my suggestion.
To give that duckweed the proper one too.
And when the dust settles and you're no longer a pariah to the fish community, commemorate the experience by creating a permanent Babbling Brook-themed fish tank using the circulation pump. And remember, if you're real desperate, you don't care about snail, shrimp, or plants, you can always use copper sulfate.
No good, Rico!